It has to do with your body. Your soul partner is aware of it. However, someone is telling everyone that you resemble my cherished child. Someone made the decision that your physique would become the narrative they told before anybody ever saw your smile, your voice, or the compassion concealed within your heart. Behind your back, they made comparisons in whispers. They chuckled. They made things up. They depicted you in a way that was never really you. However, one individual never trusted those voices. When your soulmate first glanced at you, they saw something entirely different. They observed details that no one else could comprehend. And everything has subtly changed as a result of that difference. The peculiar thing is that your sweetheart hasn't said anything while someone else keeps repeating the same hurtful description. Why? What do they guard? And what transpired when they at last recognized the source of those remarks? Don't give up because no one anticipated the response. Every rumor has an impact, but this one has been pointing to a reality that has been concealed for far too long. Your sweetheart initially dismissed those remarks as innocuous background chatter. People pass judgment. People make comparisons. When people don't understand someone, they make up stories. Then, however, an impossibility occurred. After hearing such viewpoints again, they started to notice how differently you carried yourself. The self-assurance that came effortlessly to you became quieter. It took a little longer for you to smile. You began to suspect reflections that had never merited your suspicion. Your sweetheart realized at that precise instant that this chat was no longer innocent. Someone wanted you to view yourself through someone else's eyes rather than your own. And everything connected once they found the source. Every time your name was mentioned, the same person showed up. Nearly word for word, the identical phrases were repeated. Suddenly, coincidence turned into a pattern. Stay to the very end because what your partner found out next made them make a choice they never would have thought to make. Your lover kept a close eye on the problem rather than confronting it right away. They waited for one error that would reveal the whole truth while they listened without disclosing what they knew. Eventually, it happened during a casual discussion when the person disseminating those tales unintentionally repeated a detail that could only have been known by someone who was fixated on observing you. The mask slipped in that moment. This had never had anything to do with how you looked. It has to do with influence. They thought they could influence your self-perception and even the individuals you let into your life if they could persuade enough people to view you in a particular way. One item, nevertheless, was underestimated. The version of you that existed beyond all rumors, comparisons, and thoughtless opinions had already been seen by your partner. They are now at a fork in the road. Should they make everything public right away or hold off until the ideal time to expose the culprit in a way that is indisputable? The decision they make next will have a far greater impact than anyone can imagine, therefore something enormous is waiting for you. There are times when silence speaks louder than accusations. That's just what your lover decided to do next. They realized that if they faced the wrong person too soon, the true mastermind would just vanish behind another deception, so instead of revealing the truth out of rage, they started gathering every tiny piece of the puzzle. Days went by, and the picture got more distinct with every word they overheard. The odd body-related comparisons were never made at random. They adhered to the same script. It seemed as though they had been practiced. The fact that people who hardly knew you were repeating such remarks as if they were indisputable facts was even more disturbing. How one person's view had spread so far was beyond your soulmate's comprehension. Then they saw something unsettling. After spending time alone with the same person, every rumor seemed to start. It wasn't a coincidence. It was a well-planted seed. Don't skip it because what they found next exposed a motivation that no one had thought about. One terrible realization became increasingly apparent as your sweetheart dug further. These stories weren't being disseminated with the intention of making people laugh. They wanted you to have self-doubt. When someone doubts their own value, it becomes simpler to control them, isolate them, and push them away from others who truly care about them. Your sweetheart recalled times when you silently compared yourself to others without realizing it, ignored compliments, or shifted the topic whenever someone brought up your appearance. All of a sudden, the significance of those times was entirely different. They weren't characteristics of personality. They were wounds caused by too many repetitions of words. Something inside your soulmate was shattered by that knowledge. They held themselves responsible for their delayed realization. They had been nearby enough to keep you safe, yet the harm had gone unseen. One chance encounter was going to transform suspicion into indisputable evidence, so stay with me. Then, at last, the time came when everything changed. The source of the stories boldly reiterated another nasty comparison during what appeared to be a typical meeting, hoping that everyone would nod in agreement. However, something different occurred this time. Another voice broke the silence with a straightforward inquiry. Have you ever made the effort to get to know them? The space went cold. That voice was instantly recognized by your soulmate. It wasn't who talked that shocked them, though. It was the look on the person who was spreading rumors. For the first time, fear took the place of confidence. It was the response of someone who was afraid the truth might be revealed. Your sweetheart came to the realization that this was not the conclusion they had been hoping for. It was just the start of a clash that would uncover secrets much larger than anyone in the room was ready to hear. Before anyone said another word, your partner could sense the sudden change in the atmosphere in that room. The individual who had spent so much time forming false opinions suddenly lost the confidence that had driven every whisper. They looked around, hoping someone would come to their aid, but nobody did. Rather, people started recalling small details they had previously overlooked, remarks that seemed strangely prepared, tales that never quite fit, and analogies that became more dramatic with each repetition. Certainty gave way to uncertainty one by one. Your sweetheart became aware that a significant event was taking place. It wasn't because someone disagreed with the lies that they were falling apart. They were crumbling because the truth had been waiting in silence for the appropriate time to come to light. The next revelation has nothing to do with your body, so stay until the very end. It had to do with why you had been selected. This had never been a random act of cruelty, as your partner ultimately realized. The source of the rumors had been intimidated by something they were unable to replicate. It had nothing to do with how you looked. You didn't have that style. Even when you weren't aware of it, people were drawn to you by your quiet confidence, resiliency, and genuineness. They thought they could make themselves appear better if they could persuade everyone that they were inferior. Envy, however, has a deadly defect. Words can be copied, but not presence. While the individual spreading tales was always looking for attention that never lasted, your partner recalled innumerable times when total strangers felt at ease with you in a matter of minutes. Everything was explained by that disparity. Your partner was about to make a choice that might reveal years of covert manipulation, so something significant is waiting for you. Your partner appeared out of nowhere and asked a straightforward inquiry that no one anticipated. Why do you continue to watch them if everything you've said is accurate? There was total silence in the room. Those elements had never been joined before. The person spreading the rumors had observed every alteration in your appearance, every wardrobe, and every little detail far more intently than someone who purportedly didn't like you would. It wasn't a critique. It was judgment masquerading as obsession. As that knowledge struck in, faces all across the room started to shift. You were no longer being observed by others. They were staring at the one who had been in charge of the story the entire time. They dug into their pocket, took out something unexpected, and murmured, "There's one thing about them I've never told anyone," just as it appeared they had nowhere else to hide. Everyone in the room held their breath because what happened next could completely alter their perception of you. Nobody anticipated the subsequent events. The person's voice started to tremble rather than expose another slur. With a single breath, the confidence they had carried for so long appeared to vanish. They scanned the room in the hopes that someone would speak up, but the quiet only deepened. Your soulmate closely observed every facial expression, recognizing that someone who had spent months concealing themselves behind meticulously constructed narratives had finally been cornered by the reality. Then someone said something that shocked everyone. "Because of their appearance, I never detested them." The room reverberated with those words. "I detested the fact that people would always remember them rather than me, regardless of what I said." Every gossip vanished in that moment. Your body had never been the subject of the comparison. It had sprung from jealousy that had subtly developed into obsession. The confession was far from finished, so don't skip it. More memories began to come together as the room stayed frozen. Friends recalled times when you received accolades that were abruptly cut off by caustic comments. Others recalled how, for some reason, every pleasant conversation turned critical once your name came up. It was an obvious pattern. Your lover experienced an odd mixture of sadness and relief. Relief that the truth was at last coming to light. Heartache as a result of bearing the burden of those falsehoods without ever understanding their true source. They pictured you questioning your reflection and wondering if there was anything in you that needed to change, all the while being unaware that someone else had been subtly influencing your doubts from the shadows. One more piece of evidence was going to eliminate all remaining questions, so stay until the very end. Then something unexpected occurred. Someone who had been silent the entire time slowly got to their feet and extended their phone. "I think everyone needs to see this," they remarked coolly. Old messages and months' worth of talks were displayed on the screen, demonstrating precisely how the rumors had been prepared, repeated, and purposefully disseminated to affect how other people perceived you. All the justifications fell apart. All denials vanished. The evidence no longer startled your soulmate. What they discovered at the very end of those notes shocked them. Just a few hours prior, your partner received a final text message that said, "Don't let them discover why I really started this." As they glanced at those words, they realized that the biggest secret had yet to be disclosed. It wouldn't only reveal the jealousy of one individual if that secret cause was revealed. It would reveal an aspect of your relationship that no one could have predicted. The room became so quiet that it seemed difficult to ignore even the slightest movement. Nobody grabbed the phone. Nobody was brave enough to speak up. Your partner and the last message flashing on the screen were the focus of every set of eyes. Keep them from learning the true reason I started this. No one was able to forget their words. Your sweetheart was aware that the communication wasn't written in confidence. Fear led to the writing of it. Dread that every lie, rumor, and well-planned diversion has been eaten up by the true motivation. They inhaled deeply and turned to face the culprit, anticipating another justification. Rather, they observed something quite different. I apologize. It was the realization that the truth could no longer be controlled, not the remorse of being discovered. The next confession would show that your body was never the intended aim, thus something enormous is waiting for you. The question that no one else dared to ask was eventually posed by your sweetheart. What did you fear they might find out? The response took some time to arrive. The room was silent for what seemed like minutes. Then the person lowered their head and revealed something no one had anticipated, their hands shaking. They acknowledged that when they first met you, they had observed how easily people trusted you, paid attention to you, and felt at ease with you. It had nothing to do with how you looked. It was about the subdued presence you conveyed without making an effort. They were afraid they would gradually lose the attention they so desperately desired for themselves if people kept seeing the real you. They thereby produced a diversion. In the hopes that people wouldn't notice the traits they couldn't emulate, they persuaded everyone to concentrate on their bodies rather than their personalities. For a little period, your partner closed their eyes because all of the painful memories suddenly made perfect sense. However, another surprise altered everyone's perception that the riddle had finally been solved. Silently, the individual who had revealed the text scrolled to the start of the exchange and froze. No one has previously spotted an older message. Long before the rumors began, it had been sent. There was just one sentence in it. I will always lose if they ever come across someone who genuinely sees them. As those words reverberated around the room, your soulmate's heartbeat accelerated. The purpose of the lies had never been to undermine your trust. They were designed to keep you two apart before your bond could develop to its fullest. Every comparison, word, and rumor had all been a part of the same desperate scheme. Your soulmate saw that someone else had just entered the doorway as they turned to face you. Someone who had seen the entire confession and was about to tell them one last thing they weren't ready to hear. Every talk abruptly stopped when a single stride reverberated through the entryway. At first, nobody recognized the guest, but their composed demeanor conveyed the weight of someone who had been anticipating this precise moment. Sensing they hadn't just happened to show up, your partner turned toward them out of instinct. I've listened to everything and you're still missing the biggest piece of the story, the stranger said softly after taking a quick look around the room. Every expression seemed bewildered. The rumors had come to light. The communications had come to light. What might be left? The visitor then turned to face you and stated, the person who started all of this wasn't trying to convince the world that you looked like someone else. They were attempting to prevent people from realizing your true identity. Like a tsunami, those words swept across the room. The visitor, who had been seeing the events from a distance for months, said, "Don't skip because what came next completely changed the meaning of everything that had happened." They had witnessed how insignificant remarks gradually gained credibility due to their frequent repetition rather than their plausibility. Few individuals ever noticed the trend they outlined. People frequently attempt to change another person's identity when they are unable to surpass that person's genuineness. Rather, they avoid taking direct aim at what makes someone unique. They divert everyone's attention with something simpler to evaluate. Every sentence struck a chord with your partner. They recalled the innumerable instances in which your generosity was disregarded and pointless comparisons took center stage in every conversation. They suddenly saw why you had occasionally come across as aloof. You weren't becoming less of yourself. The burden of defending an image that had never been yours was wearing you down. The visitor had kept one more revelation for last, and it involved your partner in a way that nobody anticipated, so stay until the very end. The guest unfurled a single handwritten paper from a folder they had been carrying. No one else was supposed to read this. It wasn't just another rumor, they claimed. It wasn't just another charge. Your soulmate was stopped in their tracks by an honest observation in a private note that was written long before the rumors had begun. Making others feel visible without expecting anything in return was identified as your best strength. It's a trait that can't be replicated or erased by rumors. The handwriting was instantly recognized by your partner. It belonged to the same individual who had been disseminating those untrue tales for months. They had secretly appreciated the very traits they later attempted to hide until envy seized over. The room became quiet once more. This silence, however, was unique. There was no suspicion about it. It was full with insight. Your sweetheart discovered a single statement scrawled at the bottom of the paper that had never been uttered aloud just as everyone started to think the truth had finally come to light. A sentence that is only meant for you and has the power to permanently alter the course of your relationship. The last sentence held your soulmate's attention. It was brief and nearly unimportant. However, there was something about it that made each heartbeat seem more intense than the last. They silently and painstakingly read the lines before turning to face you with a visage that no one has ever seen before. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't just another justification. It said, no one will be able to keep them little again if they ever realize how magnificent they really are. The room was motionless. All of the harsh comparisons, the opinions that were whispered, and the attempts to make you doubt yourself appeared painfully obvious all of a sudden. It had never been strong enough to define you. It had only been strong enough to keep you from looking at yourself. Your sweetheart was finally prepared to share what they had been keeping hidden for so long, therefore something enormous is waiting for you. Your lover took a deep breath and revealed something they had never intended to express out loud. Long before today, I had some knowledge of this. Everyone was shocked by the confession. They clarified that they had observed odd conduct, covert chats, and covert attempts to keep the two of you apart months prior. However, they hesitated each time they thought about informing you.